I thought this would be a great moment to both talk about overlaps between art and architecture, but also how they diverge, or they are very distinct things within themselves in the way that their disciplines operate. So I tossed out a few kind of themes or topics that I told Sarah and Sabina that I would kind of cover. And I think I'll dive in, the first one being what I'm calling objectness. We were just talking about how architects like to make up words. Artists do it too, but architects, I don't know, they think they've invented some of these things, right? But just the idea of, if you think about it, architecture itself within, let's say, I don't know, probably the last 50 to 70 years, really fixating on the object, or kind of burying its head in its sand as a discipline that's really much more concerned with how things look as a form than it is about how they might interact. So slightly dismissive sometimes in the tone about urbanism, landscape architecture, like these allied disciplines that clearly are critical to the idea of context. And then when humans, who the stuff should be for, have to occupy things, like how these things interface. But a fetishization on the beauty of the object, the form, modernism, postmodernism. So even though these things have to do with context, or they belong to other disciplines, there's this fixation on the object. And so then you come to the mountain, and just the scale of this thing in this room clearly asserts its objectness, right? And so I thought that would be an interesting place to start in terms of how the way in which you approach things might overlap. So maybe we start with Sabina, who maybe wasn't thinking about this in that context. Maybe talk a little bit about, the mountain was used as a metaphor, but also the idea of when you're making, how present is the idea of the object when it takes on a scale that's human, or even beyond human. Is this a jump for you, or is this something that kind of has come about as a result of thinking through working with the mountain?
It's actually it's actually a jump. It's a jump for me, but a logical, and that I approached this particular project deliberately to make it too big for the room. And it seemed to be important that you couldn't see the whole thing all at once, that it took on that quality of the elephant, where you could touch the leg and you didn't know what it was, and the trunk, you didn't know what it was. So that it didn't assemble itself, but it stayed in the realm of the experiential. So that even though it is an object and a sculptural object, it's also something that can only be understood through experience. And that philosophically that's my ideology. That's very important to me. And it's something that in the last exhibition I had, I worked on 3 different rooms that had 3 different distinct things, and everything was geared towards the body, or bigger than the body. Some part was monumental, but bigger than the body. And I really thought about and sort of studied, mostly just sitting there looking at it a lot, about how important it was to keep that haptics going. And there was something feminist about dismantling the monumental object that also seemed very important in this. Even though it is this monumental object, it's not.